Come on, y'all, give it up for Jesus this morning. You can do better than that. Hey, so I am so glad to be back. The last 2 weeks being over in Albania, but I love that I was able to catch some of it online. Love technology where I was all the way on the other side of the world, but we were still together. And I just want to give props to the volunteers and the rest of the leadership here. I think ministry happened better the last 2 weeks with me gone, maybe. I don't know. God did great, amazing, wonderful things. And what is so true about Ovation Church is that it's not built on a personality. It's not built on what I do up here on a platform, but there are so many amazing volunteers and those that serve. And so I just want to give it up for them this morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And even right now, we've got amazing volunteers serving back there in the kids area and people out in the lobby even right now, making sure that ministry happens. And so we absolutely love the volunteers that are here. So I was reading a story. I came across this story as I was studying for today's message. And it happened a couple of years ago. I believe it was in 2014. It says that Mary Mills and her elderly father, Cecil, went for a walk near their home in D.C. After a few blocks, her father collapsed. Mary Mills held her father in the street and screamed for help. Fortunately, they were across the street from a fire station. A passerby rushed across the street and banged on the door of the fire station, knowing the firefighters are trained to provide emergency medical help. But they wouldn't leave the station. The same thing happened when two more people tried to summon the firefighters for assistance, Mills said. We looked across the street at the fire station. There was a firefighter that was actually standing against the fire apparatus, she told CNN. Everybody started to try to wave him over, but the firefighter said that he had to be dispatched first. I even ran to the curb and said, "Are you going to help or let my dad die?" Later, after an ambulance finally arrived, Cecil Mills died at the hospital. The firefighters union said the incident simply should never have happened. We need to find out why it did occur and make sure it never happens again, said Ed Smith, president of the D.C. Firefighters Association. The city's deputy mayor added, "These are the people who run into burning buildings. They work in the most hazardous conditions imaginable. They cross the streets. They cross highways to get to people. It is understood. It is common. This is why it is so troubling that we did not take the appropriate action in this case. It's right across the street." Man, I read that, and what shocks me and shocks you is that what that person said is that they run into burning buildings. They run to rescue people. And so while that's kind of expected, we all have seen these pictures. We've seen them risking their lives to bring hope and healing to people and to value life. And that's what you and I expect of firefighters, and that's the job they agreed to do. That's the assignment that they've accepted. And so when we hear that not happening, it's appalling and it shocks us. And it should. And I know many police officers, EMS, firefighters, and they would be appalled at that type of response, because every firefighter I know, they live for that day where they can save a life. They go to work and they're prepared to act in the moment that it needs to be happening and save someone. They're wired that way. And so we see something like that and we're shocked and say that should not happen. Today I want to talk to you. Today's message I titled First Responders. And I want to make a connection between that idea of those that run to danger to help people and how we understand that with firefighters and first responders, that's the assignment they have and they've agreed to. Now, I want to connect that with your thinking about a disciple of Christ. Because we have an assignment from God as his disciples, and oftentimes people ask, God, what is your will for my life? God, I want to know your will for me. If we read Scripture, Jesus was not ambiguous about the assignment that he was giving to his disciples. It's actually very clear in Scripture. In fact, I want to read a couple of these to you. You know Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the four Gospels. The way the Bible is written, maybe you've opened it up and you started reading, you thought, well, this is strange. They put a couple of copies in my book because it's the same stories. Well, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are four different eyewitness accounts of what happens in the life of Jesus and the ministry of Jesus. And so in Matthew chapter 28 is recorded the words of Jesus. It says, verse 19, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. That's a clear assignment that Jesus has given his disciples. And Mark, similarly, in Mark 16:15 says, and he said to them, go into all the world, preach the good news to all creation. In Luke chapter 24, verse 47 says, and that this message of salvation should be taken from Jerusalem to all the nations. There is forgiveness of sins for all who turn to me. In John 20:21, Jesus says, as the Father sent me, I am sending you. There's no question about the assignment that is on a disciple of Jesus. For those who say, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm a Christian, that then we should not wonder about the assignment that we're agreeing to and the assignment that God has given us. Even after the death and resurrection of Jesus, and man, I'm so excited for Easter coming up in a few weeks where we're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus and the victory that he has purchased for us in ways that you and I could never do for ourselves. But after the resurrection of Jesus, and here's the disciples and the ministry that Jesus started, now Jesus is ascended up into heaven, and now what's supposed to happen? Jesus started this ministry and brought salvation, but then he left the work for his disciples to do. And that's what we see in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where it says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem. So that's your hometown. That's where they were. Their family members and those close to them. And in all of Judea, that's a little bit wider area, their county, you could say, that area. And then in Samaria, even a little bit larger area, and to the ends of the earth. Oftentimes, ministers and theologians will break that down to say, start at home. Start with those closest to you. Make a difference in your kid's life and your spouse's life, and start with those that are closest to you, those that then you expand to those that you work with and those that you shop with and those that maybe you go to school with and they're in your classroom with you, and then expand out from that, ultimately to where even on your Facebook page, the known world, you even represent Jesus there. And so those are the marching orders that Jesus has given us. And let me ask you this. What if you're this first responder for somebody spiritually? What if there's somebody across the street from you that is in need of the work of Jesus in their life? And are you even aware that they're there? What if you're the one that God has put in their path and you're the one that God has given the assignment to reach them? Are you going to be active to engage and to fulfill that? I want to ask you this question, if not now, when? If not us, who? If not now, when? And if not us, then who? You know, I want to be aware of the people around me. I want to be aware of the needs that people have, but sometimes I'm not very good at it. And can I tell you the reason why I'm not very good at it if I catch myself? It's because I'm so concerned about myself, I don't think of others. Like that's the greatest obstacle in my life to see the need in other people's lives is because I'm just focused on myself. It's not because I'm an evil person. It's not because I'm not compassionate towards them. It's not because I hope ill of them. It's not because I secretly wish they would choke on their soup. You know, it's nothing bad like that. It's simply, I don't even notice because I'm concerned about me. But I think that there's a lesson that we can learn from an encounter that Jesus has with a woman at the well. And if you've been in church for a while, you've heard this story a little bit, and you're possibly familiar with it, and so you'll see a lot of familiar things as we read this. It's in John chapter 4. Verse 27 is where we'll start. It says, just then, his disciples, Jesus, let me give you a little bit of backstory. Jesus and his disciples are walking through from one town to another town, and they pass this area called Samaria. Samaria was a very racially tensioned area because they were half Jews and half Gentiles. And so they were a mixed race. And so Jews didn't like them, and Gentiles didn't like them. And for a Jew, they represented compromise. For a Jew, they represented people that rebelled from the instruction of God and mixed with other races at the time in the Old Testament when they were supposed to be dedicated to serving God. And so the Jews didn't like them. And then the Gentiles didn't like them. And that's who lived in Samaria. And this Samaritan woman was going out during the midday to get water from a well. And it was odd that she went in midday because if you do history research, you wouldn't go during the midday. That's not the right time to go. You'd go in the morning or you'd go in the evening. So most would say she went in the midday because she didn't want to see anybody. She is tired of the judgmental looks from neighbors and other people, and she was trying to avoid people and just didn't want to be seen, wanted to avoid all of the chaos or the drama, right? And so Jesus and his disciples are walking, and Jesus' disciples go to run an errand. And Jesus is there by himself. And so that's where we pick up the story where it says, just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. See, so Jesus starts a conversation with this lady. And Jesus says, hey, give me some water. She's there at the water well, has her bucket, and is pulling up water. And Jesus says, can I have some water? And for you and I, we're like, he was thirsty. Makes sense. In that culture, how big that was. First of all, Jews didn't talk to Samaritans. Like, you don't do that. So that was this racial divide that Jesus crossed just for him to talk to the Samaritan. And then a male talking to a female just didn't happen in that day, mainly for two reasons. It just would have seemed inappropriate in the culture to do that. But then number two, in the culture, men looked down on women, and men didn't respect women. And so for Jesus to bridge that gap and to have a conversation with her and give her dignity and speak to her with respect the way he did, elevated her in a way that culture never did. Pretty amazing that Jesus broke those divides. And Jesus actually says, hey, give me some water. She's like, wow, what are you doing talking to me? And then Jesus says, tell me about your family. And she says, well, I'm not really married right now. And if you know the story, Jesus says, yeah, you're right, you're not married. In fact, you've been married 4 times, and the person you're living with right now is not your husband. She's like, oh, shoot. And at that moment, she realizes, I'm not talking to just any old guy. There's something special about this guy. And Jesus said that if you would ask me, I would give you living water. And there's a lot theology we could pull out of that what she was really thirsty for in life and the things that she was longing for and the void that she had, Jesus was the answer to that, not another relationship. You know, not anything that in the natural could be filled. She didn't need something that this world provides. She needed life that only comes from Jesus. And so there's a lot of truth in that. And so she says, you must be a prophet. You must represent God. And he says, you're right. And she goes into town to tell the town that I've met this guy that told me everything about my life. We'll catch back with the story. And so she, again, let's just start at 27. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with the woman. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? It's interesting that most of the time when you tell a story, you talk about what did happen, not what didn't happen. And so here's John writing the story, reflecting back at that moment, and I wonder if he regrets, like, why didn't we ask Jesus what was going on at the time? But oftentimes the disciples were a little bit clueless. And so they said, why are you talking to her? They didn't ask anything. And then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, come see a man that told me everything I did. Could this be the Christ? And they came out of town and made their way toward him. Meanwhile, so this is all happening very quickly. Like it was probably like a minute's walk from the town to the water well. And so the disciples are still there with Jesus. She runs in, starts yelling in the town about all this and what's going on. And so I can, in my mind, I imagine somewhere between 30, maybe 75 people from the town start coming out. And it says they came out of the town, they made their way toward him. Meanwhile, the disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat you know nothing about. Then his disciples said to each other, did he call Uber Eats? Could someone have brought him food? And Jesus is like, oh, not again, disciples. I have to explain everything to you. And he says, my food, Jesus said, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Jesus knew he had an assignment on his life. Jesus wasn't going to sit idly by when there's somebody in front of him that has a need. When he can do something in somebody's life that will bring salvation, will bring relief, will address a problem, Jesus isn't going to just sit by idly. And then this is what he said. Do you not say 4 months more and then the harvest? That seems odd to us. We're not farmers and we don't know what he's talking about. And really that's a colloquialism that means why do today what you can put off tomorrow? It's about procrastination. And this is common saying to say, hey, you know what? We got plenty of time. We can worry about that later. And so Jesus is saying that as the town is walking towards them. And I can imagine the situation. They're there at the well. The wind's blowing a little bit. The sun's beating on them. And they're thinking about food. And they're wondering, why is Jesus talking to this lady? And it's all so confusing to them. And here's 30 to 75 people from the town making their way, walking over to him. And he says, I'm here to do the will of my Father. There's something more important going on here than food. And while you would procrastinate, while you'd think, oh, we'll get to this later, while you would think, oh, there's plenty of time to do what God has called me to do, Jesus is saying, no, if not now, when? And Jesus is saying, if not us, who? Nobody else was going to talk to this lady at the well. And then, this is great. This is so powerful. Jesus says, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Jesus is saying right now is the time for us to fulfill the assignment. Right now is the time for us to be about the work that the Father has given us. We can't be distracted. We can't procrastinate. There's an urgency to what Jesus is saying. And while nothing is wrong with food, that's not what we should be distracted and thinking about right now when there's people hurting and people in need. What a powerful thing. You know, I was thinking, like I said a minute ago, the greatest obstacle in my life to see the needs in other people around me is I'm so focused on me. Could it be that there really are those that I interact with, that you interact with, that are really in need, but we don't even see it? Our eyes are not open to it because we're just thinking about ourselves. How many times is it possible that God has put you in a situation to make a difference, but you didn't act because you didn't even realize? You didn't even notice. And I think it's amazing the way Jesus says, open your eyes and look. Open your eyes and look. Some of us are very nearsighted. We're very nearsighted where we can only see and focus on the things closest to us. And so the things that are close to me, the things that I care about, the things that affect my life, I notice those things. But just outside of that, I don't even see it happening. I remember, I wear contacts, and I remember when I finally realized that I needed to do something about my eyesight. I was working at Sears Roebuck at Ridgemar Mall. I think it's closed now. I'm not sure. But at Ridgemar Mall, I was working there, and I was in the tool department, Craftsman tools, right? You did table saws, all that stuff, right? And so I was working there, and somebody asked me for directions to, like, kids' clothing. And I remember saying, you just walk down here right by the escalator, and you turn, you go down there, and there's going to be kids' clothing right down there. And this customer turns and looks and says, oh, you mean by the sign that says? And I was looking, and I saw no sign, and I sure didn't have a clue what it said. And so I said, like any good sales associate on commission, yes, absolutely. Right there, right? And so the person just walked and never saw them again. They're probably still lapping Sears to today looking for the clothing section. But I realized that there's an issue because if this person can see that sign and I don't, I actually remember after they left, I walked down the aisle and was looking. I was like, there's a sign. There's a sign there, people, right? And so I realized I got to go get my eyes checked. And when I did, and the guy says, you're nearsighted. I was like, no, I can see things close to me. It's the far away stuff that's the problem, right? And I was like, that's weird terminology. That's like going in because your arm's broken. They take an x-ray and say, oh, I see the problem. Your legs work. It's like, what? No, that's not the right. No, I'm nearsighted, farsighted. I don't know. I'm still confused about that a little bit. But in our lives, we can become spiritually nearsighted where we're so focused on ourselves and only see what is near us, and we miss those that are hurting around us and the people that God has really put in our lives to help. So I want us to open our eyes. I want us to see those around us. And so I've got a couple of points. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. This is our prayer that we need to be saying, God, do this in my life. Help me with this. Number one, open our eyes to where they are. Open our eyes to where they are. I talked about this a little bit last week when I recorded my message in Albania that you saw last week, where I talked about the people that we need to be considering our mission field are not flights away, but they're footsteps away. They're just across the street. They're not across the ocean. They're across the street. Where are those people at in your life? And this is what I believe. I believe God has put you in environments to make a difference in somebody's life. That you're there to be a first responder. You're there to be an agent of change. That God wants to use you to be part of the miracle salvation story in somebody's life. Where are they at in your life? And it really happens just as you're living your life. God has these divine appointments that you maybe thought were an accident, but really God was setting you up and was having you in the same place as somebody else that was in need. This is what it says in Psalm 37:23. It says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord." It wasn't by accident that you were there at that time to run into that person. Proverbs 16:9 says, "We make plans, but the Lord determines our steps." God's doing something in your life and in my life as we're just living life and it all seems normal, but really God is putting you in positions to be a catalyst for life change in other people's lives. But are our eyes open to that? We need to be conscious of the people around us. We need to see a need and we need to meet it. You know, this has happened to you before, where you were driving and maybe you were in the wrong lane. That's an exit only. You needed to get over. Maybe you were driving and there's your exit and you needed to get over to take the exit, and you look and there's somebody right there. Like, it'd be rude of you to get over because they're just right in that ambiguous pocket of, is it rude or is it not rude? And I don't want to be rude. And you turn your blinker on and they speed up a little bit. That's happened to you before. I was driving the other day and I had to go out to Grapevine, and as I was driving, the road splits and I needed to get over one, and there's a car, and I turn my blinker on and they drive up next to me. And I'm thinking, you saw my blinker. There's nobody else on the road. The entire road is open, and you drive up next to me. And then not only that, there's an empty lane on the other side of them that they could have gotten over and let me over, and they didn't. I'm not going to tell you what church bumper sticker they had. I'm not going to tell you. And so I'm driving, I'm like, are you kidding me? I know you saw my blinker. You saw that I was here, and I had to the audacity of making me slow down, right? I had to slow down. They passed so I could get over. And Cole and Addison were with me, and I said no cuss words, and I did not make any gestures, okay? I'm just letting you know, Pastor Win in that moment, okay? And so, but I know they saw me. How do I know they saw me? Because I've been them before, right? And I saw somebody's blinker, and I didn't slow down. I didn't move over. I was on cruise control, and I wasn't going to change course. That's how I know they saw me. I don't know if this has happened to you before. You're in a parking lot, and this happens to me. Tuesday, Taco Tuesday at Rosa's. If y'all don't know about Taco Tuesday at Rosa's, I'm about to change your life, okay? Half price Taco Tuesdays at Rosa's right here in Burleson. Go there, order it up, save it for the next day. Whatever you want to do, man, it's so good. Actually, my kids are tired of it. They hate Taco Tuesday now, but I still go. So I'm there, and if you're ever there at night, the intersection right there at John Jones and 174, it's just so much traffic in the evening. And I'm coming out of Rosa's parking lot, and all the cars are there. All the lanes are used up. The light is red. And I'm wondering, when the light turns green, is one of them going to hold off just a couple seconds and let me pull in, right? You've been there before. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking to make eye contact through the window. And you know what happens? They're sitting there like this. And they know I'm right there. And they won't look. They don't even look straight. They purposely turn their head away from me, knowing that I want in. Every once in a while, like God parting the Red Sea, there's some kind soul that looks over there and goes. It's like, give them a gold star right there. That's awesome. And you know, because you've been in both of those positions before. You've been there where you were tired, you wanted to go home, and you didn't care that they needed in. You're like, Sorry, pal, last week somebody didn't let me in. I'm not letting you in, right? No, that's not the way Pass It Forward works. But you've been there before. Here's the thing is that why is it in those situations we turn away and we don't want to look? Because you know and I know that as soon as you look and you make eye contact, you're accountable for how you respond. That when you see the need in somebody's life, you then have to make a choice. Am I going to meet that need, or am I going to contribute to making that need? Am I going to be part of the solution now, or am I going to be part of the problem? And so oftentimes we don't want to see the hurt and the pain around us, because then we might have to do something about it, and it's just easier on our conscience if we don't see it. And as small as that is driving, we look away. And Jesus says, open their eyes. Open our eyes. In reality, we need to connect before we correct. So often we're, as Christians, so concerned about being right, but we actually need to connect before we correct. If you're taking notes, number 2, this should be our prayer. Open our eyes to who they are. To who they are. You know, it's easy to be annoyed at people right now. This world that we live in, somebody's like, hey, man, they are annoying. Yes. It's easy in this world. Like, everybody's on edge right now in this world we live in. Have you noticed that whether you're at a fast food place, you're in line somewhere, you're scrambling for the last package of toilet paper, or just whatever it may be, you post something on Facebook, and if you say, I like apples, then people are like, why do you hate oranges? You know, and just all of this tension. And like, people can just be so annoyed and annoying right now. Like it seems like there's this tension that just is growing with that. And it's easy to blame others for our own inconvenience and point fingers at people. I was at a fast food restaurant a couple of days ago, and I ordered, and my son Cole ordered, and daughter Addison ordered, and we're sitting there waiting for our food, and it's taking a little bit longer, and it's taking a little bit longer, and we're standing at the counter waiting for them to pass that tray with the food. And so finally, they put the tray together, and they push it across. They look at me like, this is yours. And I go over and I grab it, and it was missing the drinks. And so I said, oh, we need the drinks also. They said, oh, okay, I'll get that right now. So I hand the tray to Cole, and they go sit down, and I'm waiting for the drinks. And I'm waiting for the drinks. Somebody else is ordering, and I'm waiting for the drinks, and I'm still waiting for the drinks. And I finally get the drinks, and I walk over to the table. Cole has already finished his hamburger. Yes, it took a long time, but he's also 15, so that doesn't really gauge like how long it really was, but it was a long time. And so I sit down with the drinks, and I got my salad, and I open it up, and I realize they did not give me my light Italian dressing. So I get back up, and I walk over to the counter, and there's other people now waiting for their food and drinks, and I'm like, excuse me. Nobody's looking, no eye contact, no. And so I'm like, finally, I was like, can I have a salad dressing? They're like, yeah, sure. And I go and I sit down, and I enjoy my delicious salad. And I was so tempted to be angry or mad. What is wrong with these people? What kind of customer service? I'm a paying customer. Right? Like, you don't belong. You shouldn't work here. Well, I'll fire all of you. Right. But those aren't just faceless people. That's somebody's son. That's somebody's daughter. That's a brother. That's a sister. That's somebody's mom or dad. They're people, and they're valuable. And while in that moment I could blame them for my inconvenience, I could see them as faceless food worker number 2, and that is just their problem and something is wrong. Can I tell you what came to mind? What came to my mind is my niece that works in fast food and is a manager and works 12, 14 hours a day because other people didn't show up. That is tired and exhausted after day after day after day, and trying to train people that don't show up or hire people that are only there for a few hours and quit, and the chaos of customers mad and angry at them, and they still show up to work. And so I thought of my niece, because I can put a face and a person to that, and in reality, every single person behind that counter matters to God. And I could see them for the person that they are, not just an inconvenience in my life. But how often do we not see people for the value and the worth that they are as a person, but we only see them as an inconvenience to me? And do our eyes actually open to see them for who they are? This is what is written in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36. Speaking of Jesus, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. We need to open our eyes and see people with compassion instead of critique. To see people as the value and worth that they are, as image bearers of God, that God loves them, and they're actually harassed and they're hurting. And we need to have our eyes open to see that. You know, to change our world, we don't have to be like them, but we do have to like them. And we should see people who are hurting, see people who are in need, see people who are different than us, and have compassion and care about them. There's these two camps in church world that are extreme. There's a truth camp and a grace camp, you could say. And the truth camp is very legalistic and a set of rules and the thou shalt nots and all of the things that they point fingers and very judgmental. And they'll say, this is wrong with your life, this is wrong with your life, you're making bad choices here. The reason why you're hurting and family is struggling is because you're disobeying God in these areas and it's your own fault. And man, they're full of truth. And while a lot of what they're saying is accurate, they're really mean. and while I would agree in premise of what they're saying, they're not very effective in helping people. And there's that camp. And then there's also a grace camp that can whitewash a lot of things and just say, none of it matters. God sees past all that. Brush it under the rug. Don't really deal with it. God loves you the way you are. Celebrate you. It's all good. And never change, never improve, never line up your life to the Bible. Just grace, grace, grace. Kumbaya. We're all good. You believe what you want about God. I'll believe what I want about God. We're all God's children. Grace, grace, grace. There is no truth. We're all okay. You know what? Both of those are wrong. One of the things I love about Ovation Church is we try our best to be standing on God's word as truth and then convey it in a way full of compassion and love and grace, because that's what the gospel message is. And that's what we're called to as Christians, is to have grace and truth, not just point fingers, but actually extend a hand to help them. Not point fingers and say, look at you, you're on the ground, you're fallen, you're a sinner, but actually to reach out a hand and say, God has something better for you, and pick them up. That's grace and truth together, and that's what Jesus is grace and truth. And that's important in a church. In fact, I want you to take a look at this story from somebody here in the church that values these same principles. If you would play that.
family moved to Burleson about a year ago when Yvette was first pregnant, my wife, and we moved to Burleson to kind of be close to a newer job, and we were just driving around looking for a church home. Seeing how God interacts with us and seeing how God leads us in scriptural teaching. That is something that my wife and I as a family have been looking for. We saw Ovation Church's sign and we were like, let's look at their website and see what their beliefs are all about, because that's really important to us as a family. I would invite people to Ovation Church because it is really just a family. We come every Sunday and we feel like we belong, and there's no person that we're unhappy to see. There's no person that's unhappy to see us. It is really just a big family, and we're all just great friends and doing the walk of Christ together.
Thank you, Chaz, for sharing that with us. It's grace and truth together that will change people's lives. Number 3, if you're taking notes, this needs to be our prayer. Open our eyes to what they need. Open our eyes to what they need. I was thinking about Jesus at the well, and here's this woman that she came out for water, and Jesus said, it's not really water that you need living water. She didn't need another relationship, another husband. She didn't need those things in the natural. Jesus said, no, what you need is living water. And this is what I believe. I believe that if you've crossed that line of faith, you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you've received the forgiveness that he offers, then you have something that others need. In fact, you have a testimony that others need to hear. You have an invite that people need to hear. You can be part of a solution in the problem of somebody's life, that we need to see what they need. This is what we're told in John 1:14, that the Word became flesh, speaking of Jesus, and made his dwelling among us. I love this. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. People need grace and truth. And you and I can be an instrument of God to bring grace and truth to people's lives. We need to see what they really need in life and the condition of their spirit, the condition of their soul, where they need to be connected to a God that loves them. And people need to experience the same love that you and I have received from God. Others need to experience that also. The deepest, truest need that they have is a relationship with God. And I don't want you to sit back and not be engaged when right across the street is someone who is hurting and you not get involved. Doing research, and I came across the story of those firefighters. That was, I think, 2012. There was a follow-up report from the investigation. And during the investigation, when asked why they didn't do anything, one of their answers was, we thought somebody else was attending to the emergency. We thought somebody else was attending to the emergency. So I want to ask you, if not now, when? And if not us, then who? See, I believe God's put people in your life, and it's your assignment to be that agent of change, to be the one to introduce them to God, to be the one to give the invite, to be part of the search and rescue crew, to be a first responder spiritually in the needs of those around you. And I want to challenge you, don't just sit back. Don't let that happen in somebody's lives around you and you not get involved and you not at least try. And here's the thing is that maybe you don't feel adequate, maybe you don't feel equipped, maybe you're not sure what Bible verse would work or not. No, you tell them a story about how God has changed your life. You just simply say, I once was blind, but now I see. I once was dead, but now I'm alive. God has done this in my life. You don't even have to know a verse or quote a thing. You just can tell them what Jesus has done for you, and you'll be an instrument that God uses to bring people to him. That's the power that God wants to work through you to somebody else. In fact, I was thinking about this, is that what God has done for you, he also wants to do through you. What God has done for you, God wants to do through you in somebody else's life. Let's pray. God, thank you for this message. Thank you for opening our eyes. God, help us to see the needs in people around us. Help us to see that you've positioned us in a place to make a difference. Help us to value people, not just see them as an inconvenience in our life, but to see them with the love and the compassion that you have for them. God, open our eyes to the opportunities to be your witness. Holy Spirit, empower us to be that witness today. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, we're going to continue worshiping. So would you stand up as we sing this together as God opens our eyes to those around us?